The International Code Council (ICC) code, specifically the International Residential Code (IRC), does require 120 volts operation for certain electrical systems, including fire alarms. IRC Section 1202.5/2021 states that electrical equipment and materials shall be installed and used in accordance with the listing and labeling requirements of Article 110.3 of the National Electrical Code (NEC). NEC Section 110.3 requires electrical equipment to be installed and used in accordance with any instructions included in the listing or labeling provided by a qualified testing laboratory. The National Fire Protection Association (NFPA) publishes codes and standards that address fire safety, including NFPA 72, National Fire Alarm and Signaling Code. NFPA 72 Section 2.4.3.1 allows fire alarm systems to be powered by a listed power supply that meets the voltage, current, and power requirements of the system. In the United States, building codes are adopted and enforced by local jurisdictions, typically at the city or county level. The code that applies in a particular jurisdiction will depend on what has been adopted by the local authority. The inspection agency may be basing its decision on the following: firstly, specific local code requirements because the jurisdiction may have adopted an amendment to the IRC that requires fire alarms to be 120 volts. Secondly, the inspector may be interpreting the NEC listing requirement for electrical equipment to include the voltage requirement specified in the NEC. Thirdly, safety concerns, because the inspector may be concerned that a non-120 volts fire alarm may not provide adequate power for reliable operation. To address this issue, you could consider the following: 1. Check with the local building department to verify what code requirements apply in the jurisdiction and if there are any specific amendments or interpretations regarding fire alarm voltage. 2. Submit documentation from NFPA 72 to show that non-120 volts fire alarms are permitted under the NFPA code. 3. If the inspection agency is insistent about the 120 volts requirement, you could install a different fire alarm system that meets this requirement. 4. Consider hiring an electrical engineer who can provide a professional evaluation of the situation and determine if a non-120 volts fire alarm system is safe and compliant with applicable codes. It is important to ensure all installations meet the specific requirements of the local authority having jurisdiction (OJ). Differences between NFPA and ICC codes can sometimes create confusion. NFPA 72 provides a comprehensive set of requirements for fire alarm systems, focusing on performance-based criteria. The ICC, through the IRC, focuses on prescriptive requirements, which sometimes leads to stricter interpretations regarding electrical systems. When installing fire alarm systems, it's important to consider the specific listing and labeling of the equipment, as required by NEC Section 110.3. The listing will often specify the acceptable voltage range for the equipment. If the fire alarm system is listed for use with a non-120 volts power supply, it should be acceptable, provided that it meets all other requirements of the applicable codes and standards. The inspector's concern about adequate power for reliable operation is valid. Fire alarm systems must have a reliable power source to ensure they function properly during a fire. This is why NFPA 72 requires fire alarm systems to be powered by a listed power supply that meets the system's voltage, current, and power requirements. When selecting a fire alarm system, it's important to choose one that is listed for the intended application and that has a power supply that is appropriately sized for the system. If the inspection agency is still not satisfied, it may be helpful to have an electrical engineer review the installation and provide a written opinion stating that the system is safe and compliant with applicable codes and standards. The electrical engineer can also help to negotiate with the inspection agency to resolve any disagreements. In addition to the above, it is also important to consider the following factors when installing fire alarm systems: firstly, the size and layout of the building; secondly, the occupancy type; thirdly, the location of a fire alarm control panel and other system components; fourthly, the type of fire detection devices used; and fifthly, the communication method used to transmit alarm signals. Ensure that the fire alarm system is properly installed and maintained to ensure its reliable operation. Regular inspections and testing should be performed to identify and correct any problems. Proper documentation, including system drawings, wiring diagrams, and test reports, should be maintained for future reference. Furthermore, consider the importance of coordination between different trades involved in the installation of fire alarm systems. This includes electricians, fire alarm technicians, and building inspectors. Effective communication and collaboration can help to avoid misunderstandings and ensure that the system is installed correctly and in compliance with all applicable codes and standards. Also consider the potential impact of future changes to codes and standards. Fire alarm systems should be designed and installed in a way that allows for easy upgrades and modifications to meet new requirements. Staying informed about the latest codes and standards is essential for ensuring the long-term compliance and reliability of fire alarm systems. Also be aware of the specific requirements for battery backup power. Fire alarm systems must have a battery backup power supply that can provide power to the system in the event of a power outage. The battery backup power supply must be sized appropriately to provide power for the required duration. NFPA 72 provides detailed requirements for battery backup power. In addition to the above, consider the importance of proper grounding and bonding of fire alarm systems. Improper grounding and bonding can lead to electrical noise and interference, which can affect the performance of the system. NEC Article 250 provides detailed requirements for grounding and bonding. Also be aware of the requirements for fire alarm system supervision. Fire alarm systems must be supervised to ensure that they are functioning properly. Supervision includes monitoring the system for faults, such as open circuits, short circuits, and ground faults. NFPA 72 provides detailed requirements for fire alarm system supervision. In addition, think about the importance of providing proper training to building occupants on how to use the fire alarm system. Building occupants should be trained on how to recognize the fire alarm signal, how to evacuate the building, and how to report a fire. This training should be provided on a regular basis. Finally, consider the importance of maintaining accurate records of all fire alarm system inspections, testing, and maintenance. These records should be kept for future reference and should be made available to the authority having jurisdiction upon request. It is also useful to explore potential cost-saving measures without compromising safety or code compliance. For instance, consider using addressable fire alarm systems, which can provide more detailed information about the location of a fire and can help to reduce false alarms. Also, explore the use of wireless fire alarm systems, which can be easier and less expensive to install in some situations. However, it is important to ensure that wireless systems meet all applicable codes and standards. Additionally, be mindful of the Americans with Disabilities Act (ADA) requirements for fire alarm systems. The ADA requires that fire alarm systems provide visual and audible alarms to alert people with disabilities. This may require the installation of strobe lights and other assistive devices. Ensure that all fire alarm system installations comply with the ADA requirements. It is also helpful to consult with other fire alarm professionals and industry experts to stay up to date on the latest technologies and best practices. Attend industry conferences and seminars, and participate in online forums and discussion groups. Networking with other professionals can provide valuable insights and perspectives. It can also be beneficial to develop a good working relationship with the local building inspectors and fire officials. This can help to avoid misunderstandings and ensure that all fire alarm system installations are approved quickly and efficiently. Also remember to document all communication with building inspectors and fire officials, including dates, times, and topics discussed. This can be helpful in resolving any disagreements or disputes. Ultimately, the goal is to ensure that all fire alarm system installations are safe, reliable, and compliant with all applicable codes and standards. This requires a thorough understanding of the codes and standards, careful planning and execution, and effective communication and collaboration between all parties involved. In addition to the above points, consider the significance of regular maintenance and testing of fire alarm systems. NFPA 72 outlines the requirements for inspection, testing, and maintenance of fire alarm systems. These procedures are crucial to ensuring the ongoing reliability and functionality of the system. Regular testing can identify potential problems before they escalate into major issues, preventing system failures during emergencies. Also, consider the importance of selecting the appropriate type of fire detection devices for the specific application. Different types of fire detectors are designed to detect different types of fires. For example, smoke detectors are designed to detect smoke, while heat detectors are designed to detect heat. It is important to select the appropriate type of fire detector for the specific hazards present in each area of the building. It is also necessary to consider the environmental conditions in which the fire detection devices will be installed. For example, smoke detectors should not be installed in areas where there is excessive dust or humidity. Heat detectors may be a better choice for these areas. Furthermore, remember the need for clear and understandable documentation for the fire alarm system. This documentation should include system drawings, wiring diagrams, and a list of all system components. The documentation should be kept in a safe and accessible location and should be updated whenever changes are made to the system. It is also important to consider the potential for false alarms. False alarms can disrupt building operations and can lead to unnecessary responses from the fire department. To minimize the potential for false alarms, it is important to select and install fire detection devices carefully and to maintain the system properly. It may also be helpful to implement a false alarm management program. It is also a good idea to consider the impact of construction activities on the fire alarm system. Construction activities can generate dust and debris, which can interfere with the operation of fire detection devices. It is important to protect the fire alarm system during construction activities and to test the system thoroughly after construction is complete. Additionally, consider the importance of coordination with other building systems. The fire alarm system should be coordinated with other building systems such as the HVAC system, the elevator system, and the security system. This coordination can help to ensure that the building responds effectively to a fire emergency. It is equally important to remember the specific requirements for notification appliances. Notification appliances are the devices that alert building occupants to a fire emergency. These devices can include horns, strobes, and speakers. It is important to select and install notification appliances carefully to ensure that they are audible and visible to all building occupants. Also be mindful of the requirements for fire alarm system monitoring. Fire alarm systems can be monitored by a central station or by a proprietary monitoring system. Monitoring can provide an early warning of a fire emergency and can help to ensure that the fire department is notified promptly. Also consider the significance of conducting a thorough risk assessment before designing and installing a fire alarm system. A risk assessment can help to identify the specific fire hazards present in the building and can help to determine the appropriate level of fire protection. Also, be aware of the potential for cyber attacks on fire alarm systems. Fire alarm systems are becoming increasingly connected to the internet, which makes them vulnerable to cyber attacks. It is important to take steps to protect fire alarm systems from cyber attacks, such as implementing strong passwords and installing firewalls. Finally, remember the importance of continuous improvement. The field of fire protection is constantly evolving, and it is important to stay up to date on the latest technologies and best practices. By continuously improving the fire alarm system, it is possible to ensure that the building is as safe as possible from fire.